All right, let's jump into some candlesticks. So, why candles are important. So, candles tell us a story about the price action. And I always like to describe it that way, where it's always, what is the price telling you, or what kind of story is lying within the technical analysis. And so, candles are good for giving us bullish and bearish ideas, as well as sometimes, indeterminate ideas. Kind of indecision. Um, And at the heart of it, the data within a candle is the most fundamental part of technical analysis. You can zoom into a candle really as far as you want, and within each of those is every buy and sell of every token is recorded. And so, really what makes the price move is within every single candle. And so there's a ton of information available in these. It's just a matter of what you do with it. And it can often be information overload. And my goal here is to kind of get us squared away with the things that matter the most, at least things to focus on, essentially set us up with a strategy that, is a good starting spot. And so what we use candles for is to understand the market's psychology and thoughts. Like I said, every candle or every piece of price action tells some kind of story. And the story that we're essentially creating is, what are buyers doing? What are the sellers doing? What are people thinking? And that's really the stuff that helps us, one, level our emotions with trading, but also just make better informed decisions and know when to trade and when not to trade. So I kind of touched on this earlier, but candles are often a form of validation to enter or exit a trade, as well as occasionally, sometimes candles are telling you, hey, don't trade. It's a 50-50 shot. Maybe don't put a trade in because nothing looks like it's trending. And so going into that, we can talk about some of the parts of a candle. And so there's three different levels of things to discuss here. One, we can go with the major differences between these two candles. One of them is obviously green and one is red. And so we describe the green candle on the left side as being a bullish candle, and the candle on the right side, the red one, being a bearish candle. And if you look at the markers on the screen there, you'll notice that the only difference between them is the close and open locations where those arrows are pointing to are flipped between them. And so that's the only difference, is that a bullish candle has a closing price higher than its open, and a bearish candle has a closing price lower than its open. But I want to zoom out further than that. And so on the left side, we have the bullish candle. On the right side, we have the bearish candle. At the top and bottom of each candle, we have what are labeled as wicks here. And so we have a wick on the top, a wick on the bottom, and that's true for both candles. And then what's in the middle, this larger rectangle, that's just referred to as the body. And it's important to know that every candle will have all three of those components, a top wick, bottom wick, and a body. But their proportions are not always what it appears to be here. You can have a candle that really just kind of looks like this, where, imagine that, great drawing. You can have a candle that looks very different in that, the bottom wick can be enormous, the body can be tiny, and the top wick can be small. You can vary every one of these. Sometimes the wicks will actually be so small that you really can't even see them. And so what each of these are signifying, if somebody happens to be familiar with like a box and whisker plot, it's not so different, where the body and wicks of a candle are giving us four very important data points. The body is telling us the open price of the of that coin in that candle, or the coin in that candle's time frame. It's telling you the price that candle opened at. The body's also telling us the closing price, which is at the end of that candle where the price ended up. And then the wicks are telling us the extremes that happened between that close. And so if we kind of go in order, you always, if we ordered the way that these happened, you would have your open price as being the first thing that happens. Your low and your high are formed sometime after that. They don't have to be in a particular order, with the close being the last thing. And that's always going to be the case. And we'll go through and look at how some of these are actually, formed in real time in just a second. But what's important to know is that both the wicks and the body end up providing us a lot of information about buying pressure as well as selling pressure and indecision. And we'll go through some of those examples in the next video and, basically talk about, we'll tell some stories about what each candle style or candle pattern is giving us. But it's important to become familiar with what each of these data points is actually giving us. And so the last thing to cover kind of in this basic, example or basic intro information is that the chart time frame that you're charting on, and so you often see I'm looking at a 4-hour chart on TradingView. That time frame is how much data is encompassed in one candle. So if you are looking at a 4-hour chart, every candle has 4 hours of data. And you can go all the way down to, I think TradingView allows you to go down to like 1 second if you have like a premium plan. And so you can get down to the point where every candle is being generated every single second. And so the amount of data you can pull out is crazy. It's also important to know that the data collected for the most recent candle, because we know that people are always buying and selling, is always on the rightmost candle. So the very last candle on every chart is live, totally live. And that's what we're going to look at in just a second to kind of see how these are formed. But the candles are absolutely live, which means that you cannot base your analysis on a candle that is still open. Actually, I just hit the next point, which is that if trading with candles, it's very important to wait for it to close. Very often, just before a candle close, you get what I pretty much just refer to as scammy price action, where you can have a candle that's getting like really sold off, where everybody's selling, and then in like just a couple seconds before the candle closes, it immediately gets bought up really quick, and that candle now is very bullish. It's just one of the reasons that like you can't predict that kind of thing, but it's why it's worth waiting for a candle close, because you're always going to get better information when that data is firmly printed and no longer changeable. And higher time frame candles make much more of an impact on a macro level, whereas smaller candles provide a much smaller picture, very near term. That's true for all technical analysis, but extra important with candles, because if you are, if you're trying to chart something on a 1-day time frame where you're looking at, the major swings of the entire market, looking at a 15-minute candle is not going to give you any sort of usable information. So it's important that you look at candles that match your trading style and your trading strategy and your trading time frame. Right, and so the last thing is let's look at some candles. So what I have up here is a 1-hour chart of Ethereum. And so what this means is that every one of these candles is 1 hour of information. And so we can see that I'm looking at, one screen worth of candles here. And this equates to, 107 days or more days of information. And so it doesn't take much to accumulate a lot of data. So if I scroll in and we zoom into this, let's go to the most recent candles we have here. And so I'm expanding these. And this is kind of just a review / to see it live. And so, we have a few candles that are all here. And so what's important to know is that you can see that my candles are red and green. And so the red candles are the bearish ones, where the closing price is lower than the open price. And the bullish candles are green. Note that does not mean that that particular candle is bullish or bearish. The color just means the close is higher or lower than the open. It does not give you an indication about the market. The wicks on my particular chart are all gray. That is solely my preference. I'll go through that in the trading view thing later, but just know that the wicks are all shown in gray on mine. They don't match the colors. And so if we look at this top part up here in trading view, we have this open, high, low, close, or well, no, we have OHLC, and what that is giving us is the open, high, low, and close of every single candle. So as I hover over these, you'll see those numbers up there change, and they change to match that candle. And so it might not look like it, but this candle on the right side here is being printed live. And so it's a 1 hour candle, and we can see this timer on the right side here. And so this candle has 47 minutes left. Just to make the point of, what we're showing here, I'm going to zoom in a lot more. Let's go down to a single minute. All right. And so suddenly all that data we were looking at is now all shown here. And so if we zoom in, we will see, and this is a 1 minute chart, which is insane to look at, but just be aware. That's why you have some breaks here, because there's actually not a whole lot of data happening. But one thing that we can see come in is we just saw that candle get pushed down. And so we've got 15 seconds left on this candle. Let's actually just kind of, watch it out. You'll see buys and sells come in. This is Ethereum, so it does move slower. It takes a lot more to move this just a little bit. So be aware that, this one may not be bouncing around, and that is totally okay. And so we actually just saw a buy come in there. And I say it's a buy, but it's not necessarily one buy. It's just a group that has bought it up to its next trading level. So obviously one thing, while this is kind of just generating information, we can see that as you get down into the data, it gets much noisier. Like we have a candle here that let me kind of just circle it. So we have this candle here that, it has wicks on top, wicks on the bottom, and a tiny little body in the middle. But then the next one just jumps down here and doesn't really move. That just means that on this particular exchange, the one that I am looking at, just did not have a lot of trading volume. It's not important to know for this, but it's just be aware that tends to come in when something has less liquidity, which just means it's not being traded as much. But we can see that candle has closed. This one's actually about to close again, and so watch, we'll see it hop right over to the next one. And new candle has formed. And so just like that, data is constantly coming in on every single one of these time frames, and we can go out to a week chart, a week long. And so every one of these candles now has a week of data. And, suddenly on the screen, what we're looking at here is 2,352 days of data. And so candles are important. Candles are basically everything that we're trading. We'll go through some of the important candle styles in just a minute.